Support for this podcast comes from the patrons at patreon.com/FMLFPL.
Hey, welcome to a Fireside chat episode. This is Walsh. I had the privilege of interviewing three correspondents from the three promoted teams, Watford, Norwich, and Brentford. Some really cool guests on, really knew their stuff, and I had a lot of fun talking with them about their clubs. Hope you enjoy it, and if you want to help support the pod, you can check us out as always on patreon.com and get in our Discord. It's always lively, and we'd love to see you there. All right, hope you like it. Cheers. I'm pleased to be joined by Bradley Hayden, talk Watford Football Club. Watford came up last season, 91 points, second in the automatic promotion spot after a one-year hiatus down in the Championship. Bradley, how you doing? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you? I mean, for me, I'm looking forward to getting back into the Premier League. I mean, my last game that I've been to as a fan was in the Premier League, and now my first game back is going to be in the Premier League. Well, it is going to be in the Premier League actually. So it'll feel like I've never missed a year of football really.
It's like it never happened. You're just back at Vicarage Road, game day one. You're ready to go.
I can forget all the terrible defeats we've had to Man City down the years until we face them again and we're 5-0 down at half time again.
Yeah, you got two more of those to look forward. Hopefully only two more of those to look forward to this season. Huh?
Yeah, probably I'll see Harry Kane net about 10 in both fixtures this season. But
yeah, we'll see.
I'll forget about them.
Yeah, well, we'll see what color he's wearing in a couple weeks. But for the time being, 91 points, pretty tight. Bounce right back up. How'd the season go for you last year?
Well, it's kind of like a season of two halves for Watford really last year. The first half of the season was okay, but I think, you could tell really by the way that the team were playing on the pitch that they weren't a huge fan of Vladimir Ivic, who was in charge at that time. Lots of criticism in terms of style of play and Watford being too slow getting back to front, not really scoring enough goals. Sort of the attacking flair with the likes of Ismaila Sarr we weren't really getting him involved too much, weren't really exploiting his pace too much at all. Just were struggling to score. We were solid defensively, but weren't really very pretty to watch. weren't really creating too many chances.
Sounds like Watford.
Weren't really putting them away really either, to be honest. But then Xisco came in and completely. I think the first thing that he did, we didn't really see too much of a change in terms of style of play the first month or so that he was in charge. It was more so getting the players back on side. I think that was the main thing, really improving the rapport of the squad. And that really came to fruition in the season because it was the tightest knit bunch of Watford players that we've seen, certainly since we had Javi Gracia a few years ago where we got to the FA Cup final. And then after about a month or so, I think the turning point was when we lost to QPR. We lost at home 2-1. We had a 0-0 draw with Coventry, which to those viewers outside of the UK is not an exciting game to say. It doesn't sound an exciting game, and it wasn't an exciting game to say the least of things. A 0-0 draw away to Coventry on a muddy pitch on a cold Saturday afternoon. And I think after that, combined with the injury to Troy Deeney as well, forced him as well slightly to go to a 4-3-3 formation and move Joao Pedro up front and bring in another midfielder, which was Will Hughes, into midfield. And ever since then, Watford looked far more free-flowing, looked really sort of deadly on the counter-attack when they got chances, controlled, didn't concede too many goals, but were efficient when they needed to be in. Really towards the end of the season, we're grinding out results professionally in the end of things. And in the end, I think if you looked on paper, Watford had one of the best squads in the Championship. Had they pulled their finger out a bit earlier, they might have been able to rival Norwich and win and challenge for the title. In the end, that was too little too late. But in the end, managed to get back that style of football that we wanted, be more on the front foot, high pressing, and not concede so many either as well. There was a few stars in that campaign. I think one of them Obviously, Ismaila Sarr won our player of the season. Probably surprised that he didn't leave last summer. Scored the most goals, assisted quite a few as well. Joao Pedro, I mentioned, as a really exciting young player, Brazilian striker who can play up front, out wide, and he was even at times played in a central attacking midfield role as well. We had some injuries. Francisco Ciautra at the back had a really strong partnership with William Troost-Ekong. Didn't concede too many goals. Read the game really well, aerially dominant. Daniel Bachmann as well in goal, impressed the second half of the season. He became Watford's first choice goalkeeper and represented Austria in the Euros as well.
Can I slow you down for a sec? You're taking all of our fire away from later on. Can we slow down and come back to the goalkeeping and defense for a minute?
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned Bachmann, international for Austria, kind of supplanted Foster, who we know has been around for dog's years. How do you see Bachmann, as a shot stopper? Does he command the area, strength? How do you like him? Do you think he's going to be a good Premier League goalkeeper for this season for you guys?
I would think so. I mean, there's been links in the last week to Ajax and potentially Arsenal showing some potential interest in him. I don't know how true that is, but in terms of his ability, he's very commanding of his area. I mean, the one thing that you could see from those games in lockdown when there was no fans there was he was always communicating with his defence, always screaming at his defence, always giving orders to his defence. And it was one of the main things you could hear, even when Watford had the ball, you could hear him screaming orders to his back line. And then when he was called upon, he really put a foot wrong. He's got a real canny ability to save penalties as well. We had a cup fixture at the start of last season against Oxford, where he saved 3 and was named man of the match.
Yeah, and not in the penalty shootout.
Exactly, and he saved one against Rotherham early this season as well. So he's got an ability to save penalties as well. So if there's a penalty what Watford concede, there's sort of a 50-50 chance that he might save it. He's got a good ability to save them. Got really sort of strong hands for a goalkeeper as well. He's had quite some fierce shots thrust his way in the Championship, but stood up to them really well. Never really made any kind of mistakes as well. Distribution was quite good too. Looked to get Watford away quite quickly as well, which was something that maybe Ben Foster hasn't had in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, his distribution's never been a strong suit for Mr. Foster.
Yeah, I mean, in the 90th minute, when you're sitting on a 1-0 lead, you always want Ben Foster to go down to hold the ball on for about 3 minutes before releasing it. Exactly. But in terms of Bachmann, really put a foot wrong, and I would fully expect him to be, and I think the vibes coming out of the Watford camp are that he will be Watford's number 1 goalkeeper this season as well, and well deserved considering he had a really strong Euros of Austria as well, and strong 6 months of Watford as well.
Yeah. I mean, I like the term you said earlier, kind of grinding out professional results. Once Xisco got in, you guys did keep 23 cleans last year, which is a pretty good number in the Championship. For a second place
record number, I think, as well.
Yeah, and only 30 goals conceded. I mean, really good, league leading. And when Xisco came in, you kept, I think, like 11 clean sheets or something in a small window. Do you anticipate, the step up to the Premier League, being, defense focused first on, being solid, staying consolidated and keeping those 3 midfielders kind of tight-ish to the back 4? How are you imagining that playing out?
I think so, and I think given who Watford have signed this summer as well in terms of up front, they've signed Emmanuel Dennis from Belgium Club Bruges, who's well known for his pace, scored a couple of goals against Real Madrid in Champions League a few years ago. Signed Josh King as well, well known from his time at Bournemouth, very quick as well. You look at Ismaila Sarr, Ken Sema, they're not slow either. Joao Pedro, when he's back fit as well. Yeah. So what I can see Watford doing is trying to be hard to break down, trying to be organised, but then looking to try and if they do play with the likes of Sema, Sarr, King, Pedro as well, Dennis. I would expect them to be trying and hit teams on the break. It all depends really in terms of Troy Deeney's involvement this season as well. I mean, he's Xisco is experimenting in the last pre-season game with a 4-4-2. I think I would expect Watford to play 4-3-3 this season, and considering how well they've played without Troy last year, I think it's showcased that they don't need to rely on him so much, and that has been something that Watford fans have called upon in the last few years as well. So
and football fans alike.
So I expect us to be difficult to break down. I expect us to be organised in midfield. Okay. I would probably expect us to see. I mean, Will Hughes looks like he's on the way out for us at the minute, so I would expect to see someone like a Tebo in midfield, maybe with Tom Cleverley.
Before we come into midfield, because I do want to spend a few moments on that 3, because I think there's some interesting names in there. Kiko Femenia, he's sort of someone we remember as being sort of the chance creator, and a lot of our listeners, where we talk about the kind of FPL game about looking for those assists, and we know that the center back partnership's pretty strong. They've been pretty good back there, but Femenia is someone who was interesting back when he was in the division. Maybe not the best going backwards, but going forwards, he certainly created a lot of chances. Did that again last season. I mean, are you imagining him, just holding that spot, 3,000 minutes, and hopefully 100%. Chipping in a few assists?
Definitely. He's got a fantastic relationship with Ismaila Sarr down the right-hand side as well. Really, really, really pacey. And you'll see quite a lot in games, especially at home this season. And it was the case last season, seeing Femenia bomb down the right-hand side, get overlapping Sarr, looking to stretch that back line and looking to whip balls into the box. I expect that to happen. Okay. He's not one that's not afraid to get forward. And I expect that to happen as well. And back up to him, I'm fully expecting to be Jeremy Ngakia, who played a couple of games for West Ham in the Premier League 2 seasons ago, left them just at the end of David Moyes' first few months in charge, and came to Watford and didn't really put a foot wrong last season. And he's unfortunately he had a great player like Kiko Femenia in front of him. And if there are times where Femenia is injured and Ngakia comes in, he's one as well that is very quick, will always look to get forward. Maybe needs to work on his delivery a little bit more, but he's a young player, and I expect that to come with him as well. So Watford have 2 fullbacks down the right-hand side that love getting forward as much as possible and will support the attack as much as they can.
Well, I guess you got also Mr. Dan Rose coming back over to Watford. He's had quite the journey the last few years in his football. How do you see him? Do you think he's going to slot in, or is he going to be an agitator as he has done in the past? How are you feeling about Danny Rose?
Well, there's no Amazon documentary surrounding Watford this year,
That's
so
right.
we
no
Mourinho as well. Unfortunately, he's in Roma, so we won't be seeing Danny Rose knocking on the door to Xisco Munoz asking him to be played if he's not being played as much. But I think the Danny Rose move for Watford came quite as a surprise actually, because all summer it seems like Ashley Young was the player that Watford were going for to fill that left back role. To potentially challenge Adam Messina and be first choice left back for Watford. And then it seemed like it was, Watford were in talks with Ashley Young. It seemed like, everything was going in the right direction. Ashley Young wanted to come back to Watford. Then all of a sudden, over a 2-week period, any sort of noise around that ground saw a halt. There was talk of him going to America into Miami, I think. And then, you had Burnley linked with him. Then all of a sudden he was going to Aston Villa, and with a day of the news of him being in talks of Aston Villa, Watford had got Danny Rose signed up and announced. And he's someone known at Vicarage Road as well. He had a loan spell when he was quite young.
Oh, did he? I had no idea. All right.
What Watford have done really this summer is a lot of the players they have signed, they're kind of giving second chances to players who have lost their way a little bit, and they're trying to get them back to their best. And one of the things that Danny Rose mentioned in his first interview is that he was grateful to Watford's owner, because one of the first things Watford's owner said to him was that, he'd been off the map and he wanted to be the person that got him back on the map, so to speak. So I expect Danny Rose to be our first choice left back this season.
Okay.
Adam Messina is back up. I've heard we've played a couple of pre-season friendlies, and I've heard Danny Rose has done quite well in some of them as well. Might be because he's not played for over a year. It might be one where he may sort of be in and out the side to start off with until he builds up his fitness. But I would fully expect as the season goes on for him to be our first choice left back. And he might be one to throw him when he plays Tottenham Hotspur as well, because I'm sure he's going to have one that's got a lot of motivation to prove them wrong.
All right, so Danny Rose Renaissance season at Watford. We can all look forward to that. All right, let's box
documentary the next.
Yeah. All right, let's box defensively. I think that was good stuff. Thanks for that, Bradley. So let's come into the midfield three. So it's too bad to see Will Hughes go because I've always kind of thought him a useful player. We lovingly refer to him as the ghost because of the paleness of his skin and his hair on our podcast, but it sounds like he's out the door. We got Chalobah cleverly kicking around. That midfield three is going to be, the engine room is going to be a really important unit. What are you expecting that to line up like game week 1, as the season progresses, that unit?
It's difficult because at the minute it's very, very much up in the air. I mean, as you say, Will Hughes looks like he's out the door. He played for under 23s last week in a friendly. Looks like he's rejected a new 5-year deal with us, which would have made him one of the highest paid players at the club. I think having a relegation clause in there is sort of scuppered our chances of getting him signed up. So looks like he's out the door, which is a real shame. Nathaniel Chalobah is another one whose future remains up in the air at the minute as well. He's one that his contract runs out next summer too. He's not signed a new contract yet. The latest is that he's very much assessing his options.
Is he fit?
He's not
allegedly
played in pre-season. He's been injured in pre-season.
So same old Chalobah.
Building his fitness up allegedly, but okay. I think at the minute I can't see him starting at the minute because of his contract situation. And I think if it gets to the start of the season, which is only a week or two away, and he's not signed a new deal, I can see Watford doing a similar thing to what they've done with Will Hughes and looking to try and offload him. Okay. In which case, we might look to bring in another midfielder. Okay, Yakuzlu, who was on loan at West Brom towards the end of last season, has been strongly linked with us, as is
that could be a good fit
from Sampdoria. They're the two midfielders who have been strongly linked with us at the minute. But as things stand at the moment, and if no other midfielders come in, I would expect us to potentially line up with Peter Atebo, who's we've brought in on loan from Stoke, to be kind of one of our sitting midfielders. I would imagine Imran Louza, who's coming from Nantes this summer, to be in there as well. And then the other position is in that three is very much up for grabs at the minute. It depends who we bring in. I'd imagine Yakuzlu would be that if he came in there. If not, at the fittest thing stand at the minute, I'd imagine Tom Cleverley to be in there. Very what you can imagine with Tom Cleverley, maybe playing in a more advanced position and Louza to be the number 8 and Atebo to be the number 6. I think the one thing with Cleverley playing a bit more advanced is what he'll do is he'll look to put pressure on the back line. He'll look to constantly run about and just be a nuisance to teams. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Watford do this season, because in the Premier League, Watford's midfielders beforehand was always safe with Etienne Capoue and Abdoulaye Doucouré.
That's right.
Now they've both gone. We've had to build again, and we'll feel Hughes looking set to be going, which is a big blow, and Chalobah going as well, who were two of our midfield three last season. It's going to be it could potentially be a new look midfield for Watford this year.
Okay. So it sounds like you're expecting / hoping for some incomings, but I mean, that does sound pretty risky. Do you feel like the manager's going to be able to, and the Pozzo, clan with their far-reaching tentacles in every league in Europe are going to just jam some guys in there, and it's going to be like the heartbeat never left? Or how are you imagining?
It's intriguing to see how things pan, because there was a trail of thought that maybe Xisco was going to be a stopgap and he was just going to be the man that to get Watford back up, and then as soon as Watford got promoted, he was going to be moved out. Someone else with more experience was going to come in, but that hasn't. You think he's going to be here in January?
That's clearly an insane thing to think.
Our fixtures in November and December are going to be an absolute telltale for him, because our fixtures in November, we play something like City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester. I think Arsenal are in there as well.
Tough
pretty
run.
Much, I think Liverpool might even be in there as well. Pretty much all back-to-back around November and December. So if he gets to January and he's still in charge and gets through them with a positive set of results, that's going to be huge for him. I mean, I'd have personally have liked, if we were going to keep him in charge, which we have done, he certainly deserved the opportunity considering how well he did last season. I think if we were going to keep him in charge, which we have done, I'd have liked to have seen him have an experienced assistant next to him who's been there and done it in the Premier League. I don't know who that would have been, but maybe a manager or a coach who's got to get into the end of their career and wants to come in and help someone a little bit younger to learn his trade in the top flight.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen some Watford go down that sort of route.
Hey, Roy Hodgson's available.
Exactly, someone who can be kind of like a mentor to Xisco, because he's not really. His managerial record is managed in Georgia, and then that league that produces a wealth of footballing talent, and then
machinists and farmers, and
exactly. And his managerial record, is practically not existing before he came to Watford. So I would have liked to have seen a more experienced assistant coming next to him, but that hasn't happened.
Yeah,
I think if considering Watford's fixture list and the way that we've got a pretty favourable first month or so of the season,
very favourable.
I think if we were not in a position there where we've picked up points and we've not got at least 10 to 15 points on the board by the end of October, or the end of September rather, I consider making a change, unfortunately, because it's what they do.
That's the Watford way.
What they do, and they've always got the next person lined up and ready to take over.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a mentor for a manager would be anathema to Watford and the way they treat them like a meat, sausage grinder, right? Meat churner, human flesh coming in and out of that job. But
I think we're trying to set the record of how many coaches we can go through in a season. We've had 4, so I wonder if we can beat it this time.
Yeah, why not? Aim high. So let's touch on. I think we'll leave Ken Sema to the back burner, but I want to spend a few minutes on Sarr. Certainly the danger man. We all saw him in the Premier League with that game against Liverpool a couple of seasons ago, just torment them. And like you rightly said, 2 summers ago, he was very, very highly rumored to move before you guys went into your promotion season. Didn't do it, stayed. 13 goals, good amount of assist contributions. He's the danger man. You expecting big things from him this season? Another continued step forward in his progression?
Yeah, 100%. And those Liverpool rumours never really seem to go away from us, to be honest. Every 6 months he seems to be linked with Liverpool. There was only one the other week where they were potentially looking at him again. Yeah. Aston Villa is another one that's come up in recent weeks, but it seems they decided to go for Leon Bailey instead, which Watford fans are most definitely happy about, considering we're losing one of our main players in Will Hughes. We don't want to lose our best one in Ismaila Sarr, who really is going to be key to us staying up. Fully expect him to really give the fullbacks an absolute nightmare in terms of his pace, not shy in trying to knock it past them and run. I mean, Watford under Nigel Pearson, when they got some really good results under him, that when we were last in the Premier League, that first few months, or we started to pick up results again, our main source of trying to get behind was playing it to Sarr and playing the ball in behind and getting him to run at people. And that's what we're going to be looking to do. What we need to do more is we need to be getting more people in and around the box to get onto his cutbacks, get onto his crosses. And I think the one thing for him as well, he needs to just improve his consistency with it, his crossing ability as well, because you see it a few times where he's got to the byline, he's picked his head up, but the cross has either just been behind him or behind the player he's aiming for, or gone over his head, or the player has not been able to latch onto it. So expecting big things of him. I mean, he's going to bring loads of pace. Watford just need to get the ball to him as much as possible and look to get him creating as well. Another one to potentially to mention as well in terms of him is a player called Chicho Hernandez, who is Colombian, and he's been on Watford's books for a couple of years, but been out on loan, but is very much highly rated, impressed a lot in pre-season. He's one that brings a lot of flair as well. Gone for the Sergio Aguero look with bleached blonde hair as well.
Love
on top.
that.
He's attempted 2 bicycle kicks in a pre-season friendly.
All right.
Really seemed like he had a good understanding with Sarr and Deeney in that game, in the pre-season game as well. So
could he play on the left?
He could certainly be one to play on the left for sure.
Sema certainly looks like he could be
to play
upgraded.
Maybe in midfield as well.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right, cool. So, we all know what Josh King is and who he is, as well as Troy Deeney. I think we don't need to waste any time on that. But Joao Pedro, I've sort of been a little bit personally perverse over, watching him play, and he's to me, personally, those kinds of small, tricky players who can kind of do all the little bits are so interesting to me. And, thinking about him playing at 9, I mean, do you feel like he can legitimately do that in the Prem, or do you think he's going to just get like physically brutalized? How do you imagine him kind of playing out this season?
Well, for a teenage Brazilian yad, being thrown into the Championship last season was a huge test for him. And to be fair, he never looked out of place. He really stood up in terms of his physicality. And whenever there was any sort of pressure or tension boiling on the pitch and players pushing and shoving each other, he was one of the first flying in and looking to try and have a punch up with the opposition.
So he's got a little Mark Noble in him. Okay,
he's got a little bit about him. He's not afraid to get stuck in. He really works hard.
Great.
And as you say, he's got that little bit of flair about him as well. He's got a bit of skill. He's got some lovely moments of skill where he's nutmegged players last year or played some really intricate passes in behind that other Watford players haven't noticed because they've not been on the same wavelength with him, and he's just gone completely outside of the box and played a pass that you if anyone like in the Premier League like Bruno Fernandes or someone like that has played, then everyone will be waxing lyrical over.
Sure.
So he's someone that the goals dried up for him towards the end of last season, but he was getting in the right positions, just snatching opportunities a little bit. But there is one hell of a player in there, and I think Watford, in terms of his development, I love him to be our starting striker this year because he's useful in the air. He can score. He's got a real bit of flair about him. I mean, I don't know if you see his goal against Derby County last season, where he just picked the ball up on the edge of the box, nothing on, and he just caressed it into the top corner. Unbelievable finish. So he can score goals from outside of the box. He can score in the box. Decent penalty taker as well. Scored some real big pressure penalties for Watford last season too. He's got everything to be a top player. It's just about bringing out that consistency in him now. And I think with time, that will come. I think if he can get 10 goals this season or around that sort of ballpark like he did last year, that'll be a great first season for him. And if we can stay up and then look to go again the following year, then I think you're going to see some player. I think I wouldn't at all be surprised if big teams looking at him or teams towards the top half are having their eyes on him towards the end of this season. Okay. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we do have to talk about Josh King. Do you view him as a depth buy to cover Joao Pedro because the season is long and there are a lot of minutes to be played, or do you imagine that they're going to kind of be in a timeshare, or what? Do you have any read on that situation? I can see him being used anywhere across that front line because he has played out wide before at Bournemouth. I mean, King on the left of a 4-3-3 is maybe a big ask. I don't know if he could do that job. You think he could?
I think he can maybe be back up to Sarr if we needed him to play on the right hand side. Yeah. I think we could maybe see him fitting over there. I mean, he didn't really get off Everton's subs bench last season. He's had a pop at Carlo Ancelotti in the summer since. But there's another signing that really came out of the blue. Wasn't really any sort of links to him. Right. And an hour before he signed, Watford are in talks with Josh King, and then an hour later he's just signed a 2-year contract with us. So another player with a point to prove. Yeah. Didn't get his big move when he wanted to at Bournemouth, despite him feeling he could make that step up. Really struggled after that, considering he didn't really want to play in the Championship. Thought he was going to play with Everton, never got an opportunity. So another with a point.
Or he wasn't good enough.
Or he wasn't good enough, exactly. Another with a point to prove. Always had a habit of scoring against Watford at Bournemouth. So I'm hoping if he does get on the pitch for us, he's gonna fight. He might actually score some for us for a change. But another that brings plenty of pace to Watford's forward line, and a good option if called upon. Probably maybe a sub as you say to start off with, and I imagine considering he's joined up fairly late in pre-season, he's only really been getting half an hour, 40 minutes in pre-season so far. So can't see him starting the first few games of the season, but maybe as the season goes on and we've got injuries coming in, he's going to be, I would imagine him to be certainly in and around that starting lineup.
Okay. I mean, Josh King, we'll see where that goes. So I think that's about it for today, man. That was pretty exhaustive, I think, of the Watford. I mean, there is one thing about your team. You have a lot of players right now. So we'll see what the squad looks like, in a couple weeks.
And the best mascot in the Premier League with Harry the Hornet, too.
Okay, Horny Harry, here we go. thank you so much for coming on, talking Watford, giving our listeners a plugged in view of the players, the system, the outlook for the season. Really, really enjoyed having you on, Bradley. And before you get out of here, where can people find you? Where can people kind of communicate with you?
They can find me on @Bradley Hayden 11 on Twitter. So if you've got any questions here, what for the fantasy team, or you want to know, who's playing or whatever, feel free to send any questions over.
Right on. All right, Bradley. Thanks a lot. Take care, man.
No worries.
Okay, I'm very pleased to be joined by Jerry Jamieson. He's a Norwich City Ultra season ticket holder, absolute legend, friend of the pod. Welcome, Jerry. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, no, not bad. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, we're going to get straight into Norwich City. Last season, 97 points, walked the championship. So take us through kind of how it looked last season. I know you weren't at the ground, obviously, but from your couch, how did the season go for you guys with Farke?
It's funny, you asked me this and I thought, geez, it feels like a long time ago already last season with COVID and all of that. In a slightly classic Norwich style, we ended up winning by 97 points, but we started fairly slowly. It was COVID-y and we had a fair amount of players who wanted to leave. Buendia, you had Cantwell, you had Aarons, who all got ridiculously big bids from various places. So that meant for the first couple of months of the season, well, probably first month and a half, we were struggling a bit, still picking up some points, but not looking particularly fluent at all. But yeah, then from about October, we just started winning all of our games, quite frankly. And people were getting quite excited because they thought we might get 100 points and we just fell short of that. But yeah.
Okay. So you guys kind of played more 4-2-3-1, it seems like, from what I was doing my research. Obviously, I didn't watch a ton of you guys. But what kind of, a lot of familiar faces, right? We saw you guys 2 years ago, still at Cantwell, Buendia you mentioned, who's, now a villain property. But, Pukki's still there. How did it look, stylistically?
So ever since you've been at the club, Daniel Farke's done the exact same sort of base formation, which is, as you say, 4-2-3-1, 4 at the back, 2 midfielders, 1 a really defensive midfielder, so Tetty when we were in the Prem, and Skip last season, who was a massive upgrade. And then the other midfielders sort of, box to box, doing whatever he wants to do. And then 3 cams behind the striker. And we stuck with that. That's the formation that got us promoted first time round, with 1 million goals and conceding 1 million goals. And got relegated, scoring no goals and conceding 25,000. It's a lot. Last season, it was the same formation, but definitely a slightly different approach. We went not much more defensive, but we scored far fewer goals and conceded far fewer. I think the first time we went up, we conceded 55 goals or something like that. And then this time it's been 36. So it's the same base formation, but I think it's probably the 2 central midfielders that are sort of much more reined in.
Okay. Yeah, you guys had... that's a good transition. We could start talking about the defense. You guys had 18 cleans last year, 46 game played. So, pretty decent, not, about 40-ish% of the games you're cleaning. And yeah, you mentioned Skip. He's back at Spurs. It seems like Gilmore's in.
Yeah.
Is that we got to, I guess, start with just the lack of incomings. Has to be a concern at this point, right? Season starts in 2 weeks. You got Emmy out, it's going to be hard to replace. Fullbacks in place. You got a couple of, questionable center backs in the Premier League. I guess Gibson's done it a little bit before. Hanley's not getting younger. How do you feel about the defensive prospects going into the season?
Yeah, I actually think that, in terms of are we going to be a good defence for the league? The answer is probably not. But in terms of Norwich, I think we're actually all pretty happy about certainly our starting defensive line. You've got Aarons and Yanulis at the left and right back are stunning, really good, the best we've had in a long time. And actually, I know Hanley had a bit of a shocker last season, but him and Gibson formed one of the best partnerships that I think a lot of us have seen in the Championship. And for the first time in what feels like ages, Hanley was fit to play 30-odd matches in the season. So I think as long as all of them stay fit, which is absolutely not a given, Norwich fans will be quite pleased.
Okay.
The worries come if 1 or 2 or 3 of those people get injured. you're relying on an 18-year-old to lead the line at centre back. You're relying on God knows who at left and right back. So our first starting four is pretty decent, but beyond that, it gets a bit ropey.
Okay. And I mean, in terms of the backups, Byram, I guess, can play either fullback slot, and I think Omobamidele, he's an interesting one because he's 4-0 in the game. Yeah. Can you speak to Hanley? I think, is it Hanley that's kind of not in right now, or is it one of them's not ready, right?
I'm not sure either of them has played a minute of preseason yet, but I think they're both supposed to be ready. Gibson had a test or something like that, but they will both absolutely be starting.
Okay, so that's more of a pipe dream.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a question as to whether Omobamidele is first or second backup, but he's certainly not a starter.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, Gibson is an interesting one because he kind of fell from grace. Or he was at Borough a couple seasons ago, and he was kind of touted as some type of future. And then, things seem to fall apart at Burnley, and me and Tarko don't really go anywhere. It's like Deitch's best friends. Is Gibson, you see him maybe really stepping forward in the Premier League and being able to show that he can do it, and he's kind of the one?
Yeah, massively. I mean, to be honest, at the moment, our best centre back, a lot of people would say, is Grant Hanley, and
that is mind blowing to me.
Bad. It's that Hanley has genuinely improved massively.
Wow. Okay.
Much more consistent. But yeah, Gibson has been stunning. I don't know what went wrong for him at Burnley. Him and Dyche just hated each other for some reason.
Yeah. He couldn't make a Gibson-y. He didn't like the the nickname he couldn't come up with. Maybe
Gibbo didn't quite catch it.
No.
But yeah, I mean, we bought him for 6 million or something like that. It's in loan to buy with an obligation if we got promoted, and I think all Norwich fans would say that's a bargain. If he can do, obviously he's not playing against Aguero. Well, he won't be playing against Aguero this season, but he's not playing against top tier strikers in the Championship. But if he can do what he did last season, we'll be really pleased.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like injuries. You got to keep away from the injury bug because the backups are a big drop off. I do want to also just touch on Max Aarons. I mean, seems a lot more creative than Giannoulis, the left back. Do you think he's going to be able to actually get some attacking sets, or do you think he's going to be too shackled because you're in the Prem? And do you think he's going to be like an FPL option, or do you think it's just nah?
The really helpful answer is I don't know. We'll come on to it later, but it will slightly depend on what our formation looks like.
Okay.
There's a lot of talk that we might shift to a sort of narrower formation up front, which would then obviously allow Giannoulis and Aarons to basically bomb up the pitch a lot more.
For width, not that,
sure. To be honest with you, in our current formation, they're particularly shackled. Aarons is a stunning right back. If he gets held, he'll go for 30-40 million. But for FPL, picks, he tends to, assist the assist and that sort of things. He tends to do a ton of ball progressions, a ton of good stuff. But actually, last season he got 2 assists and a goal or something like that. I don't know his exact stats, but he's never been a prolific, point scorer in FPL terms.
Yeah. Okay. And then before moving over to midfield attack, I mean, you got a good 4-5-4-0 goalkeeper combo with Krul and Gunn is in. I mean, do you think that there's going to be any value there in terms of just making a ton of saves? And you guys don't play out the back, right?
We do play out the back.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that could be also, I guess, good for bonus point purposes, right? If Krul hits that pass completion stuff. But, I mean, do you think, because when I look at it, I'm thinking more of, okay, maybe the goalkeeper combo is a place to go instead of the defenders because of the saves, and maybe because if Krul ends up being good on bonus, and we know he's good at saving pens. Yeah. Are you interested in that at all?
I am. I mean, I don't know. The problem is you just come back to, we are a promoted team, and we might just have another terrible defence.
Right.
But certainly the 2 goalkeepers, if we can be slightly more tight at the back than we were last time, which hopefully shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah. Well, comparing it to that bar is pretty low, but yeah.
Krul saves a ridiculous amount of penalties. So that's, he'll probably save 2 penalties next season. I think he saved 3 or 4 season we went up, although half of those had to be retaken. But actually, I think even if you don't like Krul or Norwich defence, and who would blame you, Gunn is probably, I reckon, the best 4.0 goalie pick in the game, just because every season we've had Krul, he's been out for 5, 6, 7 games at some point with an injury. He's like 36 or something like that.
Yeah.
So Gunn will get a lot of minutes at some season. So admittedly, that might be converting into 2 pointers.
Okay. So let's shift our focus up the pitch. So midfield, losing Emmy is rough, right? I mean, he was the creative hub, and he obviously flopped badly when you guys were up last time. There were a lot of circumstances for that. We probably don't need to get into the details there, but he left and Skip left, who, as you mentioned earlier, was kind of that rock at the base of midfield in front of shielding the back four. You got Rashica in. I definitely want to spend a few minutes on him, but just generally speaking, I mean, are you expecting more incomings? Like, what's the talk around Norwich town?
I think we're expecting another midfielder and another sort of striker left winger. We've been linked to the left winger today, who I don't know if we'll get or not, but yeah, I think they want to spend probably 15 million or something if they're buying both of them to get another midfielder and another offensive player.
Okay.
The question is, Skip left, and that was great because he was our in the midfield and he was the defensive one. But there's been a lot of murmurings going on that we might not play an out-and-out defensive midfielder this season.
Wow.
And whereas we used to play, two central midfielders behind three cams, just drop the number 10 back into midfield, and so basically play, either a Christmas tree 4-3-2-1 or just 4-3-3, which would eliminate the need for someone like Skip just to shield the defence, and actually you can play three sort of box-to-box midfielders there.
And you think that's kind of the idea with Gilmore? That's the leaning towards that he could be one of those engine rooms, but also get forward.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Gilmore could play in the two, but obviously not as the defensive guy in the two. Right. But I suspect because we've now got Gilmore in the team, and we'll want to fit him in any way we can, especially if we don't manage to re-sign Skip on loan, which is looking unlikely.
Yeah.
And or sign a decent CDM. Who knows? I don't think any Norwich fan knows at the moment, but I would say that's probably more likely than not. We might play three in the midfield. In which case that will give each of them, a bit of room to go forward. So no one is just absolutely being the defensive guy.
So who would those three be? I mean, Gilmore, Rupp, and...
Gilmore, one of them. Kenny McLean, definitely one of them, as long as he's come back fine from his injury. And
Kenny McLean, holy shit, he's still there. Okay.
He scored against Man City. He's a great player.
Great player. You heard it from Jerry. Kenny McLean, great player.
I didn't hear first. And Rupp, I'd have thought. I'm sure I'm forgetting. Okay. I'm sure I forget.
Well,
I don't know. We just had a guy called Ismaila who actually looks really exciting. He's a sort of box, so depending on
him.
How good he turns out to be, it could be him.
Okay. So does that leave like Dowell out in the cold, and it would just be Rashica and Cantwell flanking Pukki?
Flanking Pukki? I suppose so. I mean, it's hard because Dowell finished last season really, really well. Mm-hmm. And if we keep our old formation, he will absolutely be starting behind the striker in that central cam. Mm-hmm. But I suspect if we shift those three attacking midfielders to two, you're not going to drop Cantwell, and Rashica is almost certainly going to start, once he's up to speed. So I suppose, I mean, Dow's expensive as he is, but I'd be worried about his minutes if you were building to get to him, put it that way.
So let's talk about Rashica and Rashica. You said it way better than me. I'll just defer to you on the pronunciation.
I say Rashica.
Okay. And Todd. So, Todd was a darling 2 years ago in fantasy because he was 4-5, and everyone has had experiences with him. He's, another year progressing in his development. Do you think he could, bang like 10, or do you think that would be like the goal for him?
Absolutely. Well, never say never. I think he's one of these players that is better in the Premier League than he is in the Championship, almost.
Less shithousery and more space.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, he's really intelligent on the ball, and he sort of needs intelligent defenders, whereas you get these shithouses in the Championship that just run into him.
Yeah.
10 is a lot of goals to score. We'd be quite happy if Pukki scored 10, quite frankly.
Yikes, okay.
15 returns, 6 or 7 goals, 6 or 7 assists.
Yeah. 8-8, 7-7, yeah.
Yeah, if we're going to stay up or something like that, they've got to come from someone, and Todd's probably the man to do it.
Okay.
I mean, it will depend how attacking or defensive and or cohesive we are. Start of our last Premier League season, we were scoring 3 goals a game, and the end of it, we scored 0 goals in 10 games. So it sort of depends what Farke's mentality is going to be.
Okay. What do you know about your new right winger over there, Rashica? Is that exciting? Very little. I mean, he's coming over from Germany.
He's coming over from Germany.
Yeah, I've only seen him like 3 games back when COVID, when the Bundesliga was the only show in town. I caught him a couple of times, and he's got something about him. I mean, he's kind of an exciting one, and it seems like he fits a good sum that you paid for him for like a team like Norwich. Could do some things. I mean, got to be a little bit excited about him. Yeah,
I think we're super excited about him. I mean, he will slot in where Buendia played on that right wing, but he's very much not going to be a like-for-like replacement. He's not going to be sitting midfield getting the assist. He will be that second striker behind Pukki, making the runs in. And I think he might signal a bit of a shift of mentality from front foot, trying to control the ball, to actually maybe sitting back, absorbing a bit of pressure, and then going on the counter-attack. Yeah. If you have him and Pukki, who are both quick and are both, good between the lines, and, Todd feeding them, or 3 midfielders feeding them, that could be quite promising. And most of the other people that we've been linked with, attackers-wise, are these quite speedy strikers or left-wingers. So I suspect Rashica might, out of Todd or Rashica will probably represent the best value, because he will be that second striker. He'll be in a lot more goal-scoring opportunities if all things go according to plan than Todd will.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like more goals from Rashica and more assists from Todd, kind of getting the ball halfway and Todd progressing it to the box. And that's where Pukki or Rashica might. Yeah, I mean, when you're saying that out loud, I'm imagining in my head like how that could look. And I mean, it does sound very like Palace-y, because that's kind of what we have been doing for a few years under Roy. And I mean, it keeps us up. So
yeah, exactly.
All right, so we'll see.
Who knows? But it will. It's hard to do this now, because there are 2 completely different ways that Norwich could play this season.
Yeah, one which would ensure that you get sent down, one which gives you a fighting chance of staying up. Only Farke knows.
Exactly.
So let's spend just the last couple minutes here on Teemu, the Finnish lad. 6 million in the game. He's cheapest starting forward, other than maybe Joao Pedro's if he's starting, but. He had 11 goals last time you were up. They all came in like the first 5 weeks, and then he didn't score at all. What do you think? Value?
It's hard. He had a shocking Euros, because Finland basically played him through an injury. But he looks like he's over that in pre-season, and he looks quite sharp in pre-season. If Norwich are a cohesive side and we actually play football, as opposed to the back half of last Premier League season where we didn't, Pukki is the person that everyone is aiming for with the passes, and he will score 40% of our goals. And even if we're scoring, less than a goal a game, he's still going to bang a fair few in.
1 in 3.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Exactly. So, no one has him in their starting team.
The fixtures.
But he's definitely one to watch. And if Norwich do look like they're going to be quite competent, it will all be going through Teemu Pukki. Do you know what I mean? It's quite hard not to score goals if you're in that sort of starting position and you get to the places that Teemu gets himself to on the pitch.
Yeah.
With this Norwich team, because everything is going directly towards him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on pens. I mean, tip of the spear very much, right? And there's no one taking up his space, and we haven't talked about the fixtures. I mean, this is sort of more of an overview rather than game week 1 who to get, but Liverpool, City, Leicester, Arsenal, first 4 schedule makers had it in for you guys. What'd you do?
It's I just think they're sick of seeing us, quite frankly. We've been promotion relegated so many times. Who knows? It's not ideal. I mean, we will have 0 points from our first 4 games.
If I guess 1 point would be a success, right?
1 point, we'd be absolutely flying with 1 point.
Well, I don't know about flying, but flying.
If we score 2 goals, I'll be quite impressed in those first 4 games. I mean, it might not be a bad thing. We've had half of our pre-season ruined because of COVID. So we haven't played a pre-season match for the last week and a half. So actually, some people are saying, well, quite frankly, we're not going to win any of those matches anyway. It's better than coming in cold to like a must-win relegation battle on your first day. You can just get some minutes.
No, I mean, that's a really good point. Yeah, you'd almost prefer this than like Watford, Burnley, Leeds, Southampton or something where you want to pick up 6 points from those 4, something like that. But yeah, it could be, though. I guess the other side of that coin is, if you guys are just getting straight up battered and dismantled for a month, how does that feel in the room?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Exactly. I don't think the fans will turn that quickly. But yeah, if we lose 5-0 3 times in a row, it's not going to be great.
All right. So, I mean, a successful season is just staying up, right?
Yeah. I mean, Farkas said if you offered him 17th, he'd say no because he wants to, almost the Euros or something like that. 17th would be an absolutely stunning result.
Managers lie. Who knew? Farkas, a manager. He'd rip your fucking head off for 17th place. All right, Jerry.
Yeah, we'll see. Fingers crossed. You heard it first. Pukki to score 12 goals.
12. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable target.
One better.
Jerry, thank you very much for coming on. I think that was a really nice and tidy kind of run through of the squad and the team, and love it. Absolutely loved it. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Joined next by Billy Grant of the B-Sodded Brentford podcast. We're going to be talking about Brentford here. We saw them come up last year in the championship, winning the promotion playoffs over Bournemouth, 5-1. Before we get into the football, Billy, thanks for coming on. Pleasure to have you. How you doing?
Right. Not bad, Adam. How you doing? Thanks for having me on your podcast as well. Like I said, this is a bit of a strange one for us because if anyone knows anything about Brentford, we're not going to be anywhere near the Premier League. I've been supporting them for 40 odd years, and we're always in like the fourth tier, the third tier. We've been in the second tier for about 6 or 7 years now. So but that's it. But we're a tiny, tiny little club. With minuscule amount of money compared to the rest of these guys. So for me to be anywhere near the Premier League and to be actually talking on a Premier League podcast is quite unusual. So thanks for having me on. Yeah,
right on. Yeah, I mean, I guess and we could talk about the A team, B team stuff, but maybe we'll save that for maybe a future podcast. But yeah, you guys have had a revolution of kind of sorts and, kind of progressing a new way of coming up the tiers, I guess. And, you got an innovative manager and, an innovative club. So it's really exciting, I think, to see you. We saw 2 years ago, you guys getting kind of very close, right? That must have been very difficult for you guys to take so close to promotion. But, last year you guys did it. So how'd the season go? How did it, finishing on 87 points, 4 points out of that automatic spot? How would you summarize your season?
Last season was obviously it was good. It worked out well in the end, but it could have been quite frustrating because the ironic thing about last season is that we were actually doing better than the seasons before. Overall, in pretty much all the areas, even though when you looked at the football that we were playing, what we weren't is that we weren't the same kind of, we were a lot prettier in the eye the season before. So the season before was the season where we did fairly well, and then we sort of petered off a little bit. Then the pandemic came, shut everything down for 3 or 4 months. And when we came back, we were on fire. And we won every single game going into the end of the season. And typically we lost our last 2, which means that we lost out on automatic promotion by 1 point. But we had Ollie Watkins playing for us, who, at the time I predicted was going to play for England. I said, he's brilliant. So if we go up, he's going to play for England. And I'll go to all the England tournaments. I've been to 15 tournaments with England. So to actually see a tournament with a Brentford player playing in, I was so excited. So the fact that we didn't go up, which meant that we knew he was going to leave, was a gutter. He scored, I can't remember, 28 goals or something like that. We had Ben Rama, who was like just the magician on the side as well, scored, I think, 14 or 16 goals, 14 goals, something like that, or 12 goals. But again, he was just a brilliant player who unlocked defences. Then we had Bryan Mbeumo as well, who, again, from the wing, he scored 14 goals and had a load of assists. And then we also had Josh Da Silva, who from midfield has scored 14 on goals. So we were like properly on fire, the team that everyone just said, this is the team to beat. We looked brilliant, but the fact is that we went on this run. And this is like not lasted the season before that. We went on a run. Everyone says that we bowled it at the end because, again, if your people out there don't know, Brentford, the team that I support, have been in the playoffs 9 times up until that point, and they'd lost every single playoff, 9 out of 9,
That's
including
brutal,
that one.
Man.
And I've been at every single one on the terraces behind the goal, seeing them lose every single one. So
God.
for me, it was one of those killers. And also, we lost to Fulham. in the final as well. And Fulham are our big rivals. It's just, it's just that they are our big rivals. Everyone says, Fulham, but Fulham don't have any rivals. But, we're talking about going back to the 80s and the 90s, two teams in West London, literally a boat ride away down the river, kind of like, half an hour down the river and on a boat, because we normally take boats to Fulham. We don't even take the bus or the train, we just jump on a boat from Brentford, which is on the river, sail down to Fulham, like, in our Armada and literally just take the place over. It doesn't go down particularly well, but it is a little bit of a takeover of Brentford, and we enjoy it every time. And the reason why we love it is that I don't think we've actually lost there in about 20 odd years, like, in the last sort of 6 seasons we've played them, or 7 seasons, we've pretty much won or drawn every match at Fulham. So we love going to Craven Cottage, but to play them in the final, it was a little bit of like, we can't lose to Fulham. We can't. No, we've just lost to Fulham.
Joe Bryan does the things.
That's right. But it was one of those things, and we were unlucky. So we had to kind of come back the following year, knowing that we were going to lose Benrahma, knowing that we're going to lose Watkins, knowing that, Mbeumo is not going to have his friends with him, his French friend, as in Benrahma, has disappeared, like, what I'm saying? So he's going to be on his own. So it was a bit of a rebuild. And then obviously with Brentford, they use you guys know it they call it Moneyball. Our owner hates that saying, because he says it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. But we use
better than Moneyball. All right, buddy.
Yeah, he uses his sophisticated way to buy players who are unknown, because he owns a betting company, and that betting company has lots of stats. So he decided when he took the club over, and he's a Brentford fan, by the way. He grew up, supported Brentford from a kid, used to bunk off school to go and watch them play, went through the business, became, very, a big sort of banker, mathematician, just clever bloke, invented his own system. And then he's got his own company, which basically, he's got a bank of statisticians, like PhDs and all this lot, that just kind of just get this stats and just crunch sporting stats from around the world. And they just watch football games, sporting games all around the world. So we just said, look, tell you what, I'll buy a football club. I can use this information to actually to find players that no one else really knows. Like, and we can get them pretty cheap, and then we could just get them to be better. And then all of a sudden it's like, we could actually do really well. So he did that, and he's taken him about sort of 10 years to put it into place. He started around about 2010, 2011. Slowly, we were getting better and better as we kind of got promoted from the third tier, the first division, to the championship. And then we spent years in the championship just getting better and better, buying players, losing players and stuff like, So the reason why I'm saying that is that year that we lost those players, the Ollie Watkins and that, they said, don't worry, we're going to buy another player, striker who's better, Ivan Toney. And we were like, okay, you've done it before. You did it with Andre Gray. We sold him. And then we got, Scott Hogan. And then he scored a load of goals and you sold him. And then you got, Lasse Vibe. Then he scored a load of goals. And then you got, who is it next? Maupay. And then he scored a load of goals. You sold him. Then you got, Ollie Watkins. You seem to know what you're doing. So we were a little bit relaxed about that. And that season we come back. And obviously Ivan Toney has been brilliant. And he was scoring the goals, but we weren't as pleasing on the eye this year as we were last year. But defensively, we were stronger, because I think Thomas Frank realised that, last season, even though we were decent defensively, we let ourselves down a few times. So he just said, let's concentrate on getting ourselves defensively better, and let's stop letting in goals on the break, because we were doing that quite a lot, where we'd go on the attack, give the ball away, letting the goal on the break. Somebody like Nottingham Forest, nick a goal 1-0, go 2 banks of 4, and we couldn't get the goal back. So we were better at dealing with that. Up front, we were creating chances, and Ivan Toney was putting them in the back of the net. The other players weren't scoring as many goals as the players around him, though, but he was scoring a lot of goals. And in general, if you looked at all the stats, we were actually a better side. And at the end of the season, we actually finished with more points in third place this year than we did in third place last year. We finished on 87 points this year. And last year we finished on 82 points, I think it was. And West Brom went up automatically at 83 points. So they actually had 3 points less than us, and they got automatic promotion. So looking at everything, we were a better side, even though we still had to go through the gamble of the playoffs and us going through all that again, thinking, oh no, we've done better than last year, and then we've got to go in for the 10th time, and it's not going to happen again. But at the end, it all worked out nice in the end. Ivan Toney was great. The defence was great. We had a few little dodgy periods where we had a few injuries. Key players like Josh Da Silva was injured.
Sure.
Rico Henry, who's a massively key left-back player for us as well, he got injured as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, Norgard at the beginning of the season was injured as well. So that actually resulted in us, having a bit of a digi start to the season where I think we ended up 18th by November. So we actually came from quite a low position to actually get to where we were. So we had quite a few kind of situations which could have railroaded us, but we rode those out. And in the end, we came good in the end. And this is with all due respect to Swansea. We were a better team than Swansea.
Yeah, fuck Swansea. We don't need to respect them.
But I'm just saying, I'll say that as a football fan, you've got to be respectful to them. And, and with all respect to Watford, they did well because they changed their manager. But, I said that we could have taken on Watford at any time. And Norwich were Norwich, they did all right. Norwich did, but, listen, they did what they had to do, which is all good. But listen, we went up through the playoffs. We were lucky enough to go through the playoffs where obviously the pandemic meant that you could not go to games at all for a year. And the year that for Fulham, we would have gone up to the Premier League without seeing a game, without being on the terraces, without going to Man United and to Liverpool, to all these places. We would just watch it all on TV. And for a fan who has never been to these places with your team, that's not what you want to do. So to be quite honest with you, it all worked out nicely in the end. We had to come back, watch it on TV, and then we went back for the semi-final against Bournemouth in the stadium, sung our hearts out, whipped the ball in the back of the net, sung it into the back of the net, went to Wembley, sang at Wembley, and it all worked out in the end. So that is what I'm going to say to you. Yeah, the plan worked out. The plan worked out. Yeah, definitely.
So, looking forward to this season. Last year, it looks like you guys were kind of in a 4-3-3 for a while. So formation-wise, towards the end of the season, you kind of went into more of like a 3-4-1-2 with, kind of wing-backy situation. What are you anticipating coming up this year in terms of that formation? You think you're going to go 3 at the back with the new signing of the tall guy from Celtic, or what are you looking at?
I think we're going to tell you something. I think we're going to be flexible, which is really good. Yeah, we're going to be flexible because what happened was last season we had to go 3 at the back because we lost some players. And what happened is around about February, March, all of a sudden teams, I wouldn't say they sussed us out, but they were getting results against us, against the grain. And we were beginning to slip away a little bit, and we had to change things up. We went 3 at the back, I think a couple of seasons before, and when Dean Smith was our manager, who's now Aston Villa's manager, we went 3 at the back, and it helped to shore us up for a while. But it kind of wasn't really our style, so we flipped back to the way that we go, 4-3-3, which is Brentford's style. But again, we noticed that this was causing us problems, so we actually went 3 at the back to shore things up for us and to stop leaking the goals that we're getting in, to see if at least we can sort of kind of get a point instead of losing games, and also nick the 3 points. And it really, really worked for us. So, and especially with the personnel that we had at the time with the injuries. So what's happened is that this next season, I think what's happened is that they realise that we can play that style of football. We've done it in training. We've got the players who know that style of football as well. But at the same time, we also can play, again, 4-3-3. The new guy, Aja, that we've just got from Celtic, who is apparently meant to be a brilliant player. He's played Champions League football. He's played Europa League football. He's played for Celtic. He's going to be playing, again, this is with all due respect with us, with Brentford, and he's going to be playing the Premier League, which is, going up a level. So he's got things to learn. Sure. But from what I can gather, he's a ball-playing centre-back. Yeah. So he's a centre-back who can take the ball, take it out of defence, and that's that is how we like to play. That's how we've always wanted to play. I think last season we decided that we wanted to just make sure that we just kept the ball out of the net. We had good in the air, good at tackling, that kind of thing.
And moving up a level, it's good to know that you can do that against the top 6 if you got to kind of throw an extra center back on and be a little bit more consolidating, right?
That's right. That's what you need to do. But again, talking to Celtic, they actually play 4 at the back, right? But also he is flexible in the fact that he plays in midfield, and he also plays at right back as well. So it almost seems that he could be a player that could play out of the right of the 3. He could play at the centre of the 3. He could possibly play right back if you need a stand-in. I mean, at the moment now we haven't got a right back because our right back, Dalsgaard, he left at the end of the season to go to Brentford's sister club, which is FC Midtjylland, who ironically just beat Celtic last week in the Champions League. So he's gone there on a free transfer, which kind of works out well for our owner because he's a great player. So we're looking for I think we're going to be looking for a right back there.
Okay, that's an incoming you're expecting.
That's right, but I think that's where we're going to be. I think you're going to see some flexibility from Brentford. The one thing that I will say is that obviously, I podcast for the Besotted Pride of West London podcast, which you can catch on prideofwest.london, and we're quite left field in the fact that we've got great relationship with, speak to the owners, speak to the directors, speak to everybody. They all speak to us, and we kind of know a lot of stuff that's going on a lot of the time. And I rang up the director of football a couple of weeks ago, or just before the European Championships. I said to him, listen, you want to come down the pub with us? Both you and your co-director of football, and let's talk football. He said, yeah, okay then. So basically I just called a load of people, told them, get down the pub. I'm not going to tell you who's going to be there. They've turned up. Our two directors of football are there. Sat in front, put a microphone in front of them, and we just basically did a live podcast where we talked about everything, about Brentford, about signings, about transfers, about the promotion, about the new season, Premier League. And it's definitely worth checking out. prideofwest.london, Phil Giles and Rasmus Ankerson interview. And they talk about everything. But the interesting thing, what they talked about, they said, listen, when we go to the Premier League, we're just going to just carry on doing what we're going to do. We want to actually go and make a mark. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. So we want to be going up to the Premier League to be seen as giving it a go. We don't want to be going up there and just defensively trying not to let in any goals and not playing football. He goes, we'll go there and we'll play football and we'll do our own thing. And if it works, it's great. And if it doesn't, we'll go down and we'll just reconsolidate again and we'll just try again. And I thought that's a really, really good sign.
It's ambitious, so we'll see how that works out. It's one thing talking about that in a pub when everyone's on 0 points, but we'll see after Christmas if you guys will have to adapt or not. But it would be exciting if you're able to play that style, keep the ball on the ground, play out from the back, and if it works out, we're all hopeful, because as spectators, that's what we kind of come to watch, right? We don't want to watch two low blocks, and that's not fun. So it's really exciting having Brentford in. So
yeah, and what I will say is just we listen. I know we're pre-season now, and it means nothing. But we had a pre-season friendly against Man United a couple of days ago. We had a mix between first and squad players. They had a mix between first and squad players as well. And after the first 15 minutes, which we were a little bit rabbit in the headlights, it's like, wow, this is Old Trafford. This is really great. And they put the pressure on us. They went ahead, but we matched them. Blow for blow throughout the whole match. And we scored. It's a game. If you again watch it on YouTube, if you can, do a game of 4 fantastic goals, 2 great Man United goals, 2 great Brentford goals.
Was that the Pereira goal, the one that hit the underbar?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a great goal. But if you just check out Bryan Mbeumo's goal as well, he scored for us. Okay. Watch his touch. Look how he just takes the touch, cuts it in, and then he cut the ball and curved it into the net. And that was Bryan Mbeumo of the Ollie Watkins season.
Yeah, so let's come on to Mbeumo, because he's an interesting one. He's, he definitely had more of a down year last year, right? And 2 years ago, he kind of made a name for himself. He was one of the Benrahma, Watkins, Mbeumo trio that stayed. Had a bit of a down year last year, kind of just a rough one, I guess, with the COVID year. But what are you expecting from him this season? I mean, he's going to have a lot more on his shoulders. So how are you feeling about him? Confident? Nervous? Both?
And tell you what, again, when he signed, and I spoke to the director of football, he said to me, he is such a skillful player. And that was in that Watkins season. He said he is such an unbelievably skillful player. Yeah. And also he says, don't forget, he's only really young. That year, I think he was 22. He's 21 actually in that year as well. So he's really, really, really young. So he's still got a lot to learn. Sure. He got COVID, and again, the playoff season that we lost to Fulham. So he got COVID. He came back. When he came back after the break, after we had the lockdown for 3 months and we went into our winning run, he wasn't quite the same player as he was before, but you just sort of think, that's just the way it is, but he just wasn't quite the same. He looked like a bit of a shadow of himself. And then we had a really short break, and then we came back this season. Again, this season, he wasn't quite the player. He looked a shadow of himself. He was trying to do things and it wasn't quite happening, but also you could see it in his face. And also we thought maybe because he's lost Benrahma, he's lost Watkins, he's lost the people that he plays with, it's just not quite the same. So last season, he did all right. He got a few assists. He got, a decent amount of goals, but he wasn't quite the same. But what I know is that he went away. He had a proper break. He went abroad. He had a holiday. He chilled out. He came back. He went into pre-season. I saw him play in the first Brentford match of pre-season, which was when we played away at AFC Wimbledon. I managed to get a ticket for that because the new stadium for AFC Wimbledon, I was very lucky to have actually managed to get a ticket because there was no away fans, but I got invited by the chairman of AFC Wimbledon actually, which was nice. So to check out a new stadium and see that. And the one thing I noticed, Bryan Mbeumo was on fire in that game. He was up for it. He looked like old school Mbeumo, and that was good. And again, he did the same thing against Man United. So what I'd like to think is that he is going to step up this season. We're in the Premier League. It's a different type of game, a different type of football. Your passing game, the Championship, you have to remember, is really, really hard. You literally are going Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, every single week. So I'm thinking with the rest, with the small spread out games, with the teams that hopefully will allow you to play football, a skillful player like Mbeumo will actually get his chance to actually show his thing.
Okay, yeah, I mean, definitely an exciting season to see, and especially if he had that long COVID, right? We saw, Kai Havertz, plenty of other people that got COVID and were sort of really not themselves for months, 10 months, long stretches. So hopefully, his head's on right, and, he's able to kind of show what he can do, because he's definitely someone that, seems like worth keeping an eye on. And, also on the more defensive side, I mean, speaking of Michelin earlier, Onyeka coming in is an exciting player. I thought he was fantastic in Champions League group last year. What do you expect from him? Gonna shore up, kind of cover some ground, shore some things up in the middle of the park. How are you excited to see him coming in?
Frank the Tank, as they call him in Michelin. I mean, we've got a real relationship with FCM because obviously, like I said, the Matthew Benham, who's the Brentford owner, he actually owns Michelin as well. So I've actually been out there, I've actually seen them play. So I've flown over to Copenhagen. I know my Michelin chums, my buddies out there. So they're keeping us in tune the whole time. And we've actually known that this was happening for a while. And we actually surprised the director of football in that podcast when we said to him, by the way, Frank Onyeka, so has he come in then? And he was like, what are you talking about?
You're not releasing this for a couple of weeks, right?
He's trying to hold it down, but we're just like, there you go. So we put that out there. So it was quite funny. Again, like I said, you've got to check out that pod. But Frank, my Michelin's friends, said he is a brilliant player. He is, they believe, and they're not being biased, they said to me, he's not only the best player in FC Michelin, but the best player in Denmark at the moment. So the best player playing in Denmark,
the league. Sure.
Yeah, in the league. Because a lot of the Danish players, when they get to a certain level, they leave and they go to Italy, they go to the UK. But he says they reckon he's the best player playing in the league at the moment now. He plays for the Super Eagles, as you know, Nigeria, the national team, even though he hasn't played very many games for them as yet, but they reckon he's going to be a key player for them. Where his kind of qualities are, and this probably wouldn't resonate too much with you in America because you wouldn't have seen these adverts, but there was this thing called the Duracell bunny, which is a Duracell bunny was basically
we had that Duracell over here. It was the Energizer.
That's right. Okay,
Energizer similar bunny. Concept. But go on.
Right. Yeah. That's right. The Energizer bunny. So literally you put, basically the batteries last forever and just keeps going and going and going. So he apparently goes for 90 minutes. He does not stop. Backwards, forwards. He's all over the pitch as well. So great defensive player, great attacking player, great energy, great strength, and he can score goals as well. So like I said, I've seen. You've probably actually seen more of him than I do because listen, with all due respect to Premier League and Champions League stuff, when you're in the lower leagues,
it's England, a little over that. I gotcha. I hear you.
You kind of like you're watching Accrington Stanley and Ipswich and Derby County and stuff like that all the time, So this stuff kind of passes you by. So because it costs extra money to kind of get that, and when you're not involved in it, you're like, kind of, I'm going to pay extra money to go and watch this.
Gotcha.
So you've seen him play a lot more than do, but I think he's a very exciting player. He's a player that at times we needed last season because sometimes if our energy levels were a bit low and you were playing the ball around a little bit a little bit late and a little bit slowly, you wanted someone to pick it up. So hopefully he's going to be the player to pick it up. Now, interestingly, I think he's going to be playing in the position where Josh Da Silva plays. And Josh Da Silva is an absolutely key player for Brentford, but he was out the back end of last season from February all the way through. And the rumour is that he could possibly be out for the whole of this season as well.
Whole season? What's he got going?
Yeah. Well, he's got. I'm not sure if he's got an injury or whether he's not got a condition. I think it might be something to do with his hip. So it's something where I think we don't. I don't know if it's sort of fixable, but we're just waiting for it to kind of to get better. So I think maybe Onyeka's come in because we just realised that we need to have this situation, and if Josh Da Silva comes back, we'll just have to just deal with it as it comes. But very exciting player indeed. Okay.
And, before we end on Toney, I just wanted to ask you about Mathias Jensen. He's on set pieces for you guys?
He can do set pieces. Yeah, it's we have a bit of a joke about Jensen, and listen, again, no disrespect to him because he's a great player, but we have this situation where people said to us, especially at the back of the season, you're gonna win this game, you're gonna beat Watford, you're gonna beat blah blah blah, this that and the other. We go, well, it depends on if we've got good Jensen on Saturday or bad Jensen.
He's the one that decides how the wind blows, kind of.
There, so it depends on if he has a good game or a bad game. And when good Jensen has a good game, then Brentford have a really good game. And when bad Jensen has a game, then it's like, oh no, you're not quite as sure what's going to happen. So sometimes he takes set pieces, and or if he takes a corner, and sometimes it may not even beat the first man. But then after we notice that when he plays for the national side, it's totally different. So I don't know whether or not he's getting different instructions at Brentford, and we've got different ways of our free kick coaches, our set piece coaches, tell us to do particular things because maybe like say for example they tell them to put the ball in a particular place because instead of just putting the ball into the middle of the area, maybe they might put the ball at the front of the area to flick it in to cause chaos in the area, and that's those kind of things we don't actually know what the process is. You see, so it may be that we're trying to do certain things to create certain types of things to happen on the pitch, and it doesn't quite come off. Whereas if he plays for another team, they're just saying, right, this is what you need to do. You need to put the ball there and just let it happen. So he's a good player, Jensen. When he has a great game, he's a fantastic player, honestly. So which is all good. Okay, cool.
So, wrapping up here, we gotta go spend some minutes on the main man, Mr. Toney up top. Scored truckload last year, certainly has a lot about him, right? He's a handful. He's going to be stepping up into the Premier League. They're going to be ready for that physical battle, the center backs, and he likes a card. Well, what are you expecting from Toney, given that maybe the volume of chances will be diminished a little bit? Is he going to be the guy that, maybe gets 1.5 chances and is going to be able to take it and finish up in the 15 goal region? Or, how are you expecting him to finish this or to take on the Premier League?
Tell you, it's a tough one because we don't know. We've never been in this position. I mean, last year, we got to the semi-finals of the League Cup, and we lost to Tottenham in the semi-final, but we beat a load of Premier League teams, Southampton, West Brom, and we did all right. So, and that also wasn't with our full first team. It was a mix of first and second team. So I'd like to think that, we'd be able to compete with them. Ivan Toney, he's been waiting for this day. He's just been waiting for this day. So he's got no fear. If you look at the body language, the body language that he's got, I think that, defenders will be worried and nervous about him. He scored 31 goals last season. Yes, he scored a load of penalties, but I don't believe he missed one penalty. So everyone who moans about he takes too many penalties, I'm thinking, would you love a player in your side that basically you knew if he's going to step on the penalty spot, he'll 100%, score? Yeah. So I'm thinking that, Ivan Toney, he's going to a different level. People know him now. People were struggling to deal with him in the Championship. If we have to be honest, he's going up to a different level. When I noticed against the Man United game, they had 2 players on him, and they were holding him down. So he had a few issues in trying to get space, but on the other hand, he wasn't 100% fit. He wasn't 100% Ivan Toney. He wasn't making the runs that you expect him to or seen him do before. So I'm thinking, listen, give him another couple of weeks and let's see what he's like against Arsenal. Let's see what he's like against Palace. But he's going to be there and he's really hungry. The thing I do remember is that when we signed Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins, who we loved, he's a lovely person. He's a great player. He's just a good bloke. And when he left, he went with the Brentford fans' blessing. At the same time, we were, one of our, sort of stats people did a little stats thing on Ollie Watkins, and then he compared Ivan Toney to him. Mm-hmm. And again, looking at the stats comparison, I thought, this is a proper, looking at all sorts of different areas. The interesting thing is that the only area that Ollie Watkins kind of beat him was, I think, in kind of carrying the ball. Wow. And there's like 2 areas where he'd beat him, but everything else.
Well, the man was also in League One there, though, right? I mean, that's got to be considered. Right.
Well, that's the thing. The thing is, why I was a little bit kind of tentative in taking those stats is because Ollie Watkins had done it in the Championship and he'd done it in League One. So can you compare Championship and League One stats? We weren't sure, but obviously he came to the Championship and he did it again. So what I'm saying is that he kind of knows what he's doing. He knows what he has to do. So I'm thinking if he could take that up another level as well, Brentford are very good at creating chances. Okay, we'll probably create less chances in the Premier League than we will do in another league, but we were very similar to Leeds when it came to chance creation.
Okay.
And chance creation, again, I know a lot of people hate XG because they think, it's a load of mumbo jumbo, whatever, but I think it's a really good indicator as to kind of you as a team doing the right things. Leeds United used to create a bucket load of chances in our division the year that they went up, and they used to miss a bucket load of chances, but they still scored and they still went up. If they'd scored all the chances that they created, they would have been clear 15 points. You know what I'm saying? They were clearly the best side in that league, that year. We were very similar to them in that we create a lot of chances. We also used to miss a lot of chances as well. But still, we did enough that we needed to do to get to that level. Now, if we can still create a decent amount of chances and feed Ivan Toney, then that's good. But what I will say to you is that Ivan Toney is great in front of the ball, but he's also great in defending. He's great in setting up. He's basically all over the place. He's a real all-round player. And that's what we've actually really benefited from him. And also what Brentford are doing this season is I think we're trying to get back to what we were like 2 seasons ago, where we were scoring goals all over the park. So we weren't just relying on one player. We had Watkins, we had Benrahma, we had Mbeumo, we had Silva. And I think we're looking to do exactly the same thing here now. So if you've got the scenario where they're all trying to crowd out Toney and make sure that he doesn't score, Mbeumo can pop up, or we can have, Canos if he plays for Fornor, or we can get, Pert Harris, who we just got from Chelsea, to pop up and score, or we get Frank the Tank to pop up and he can score, or Norgard, who's a brilliant player, CDM, he comes and floats up and he comes and he scores. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you're going to need that. You're straight back down.
Exactly. So that's, I think, what we're looking at. So keep my fingers crossed. And I think the first 4 games of the season are going to be really telling. We've got Arsenal first at home, then we've got Crystal Palace away, then we've got Aston Villa away, then we've got Brighton at home. And I think those first 4 games, which are, inverted commas, probably not the toughest, we haven't got Manchester City and then, Chelsea,
Liverpool,
in our first 4 games. Yeah, I think it'll give us a good indicator as to kind of how we're coping with this league. So let's just see how it goes.
You look at those 4. I mean, are you happy if you finish up Brighton and you earn 4 points, or that's not good enough? What's your?
So again, am I happy?
You finished Brighton that 4th game, right? Those 4 fixtures you just mentioned, you're on 4 points. Would you take that, or is that? What are you thinking?
Well, it's interesting because looking positively, if we got 4 points from the 4 games, it means that you haven't lost. So Brentford, and you've gone into our first month on a non-losing streak. So I think that's quite cool. It'd be nice for us to do something to get 1 win out of those, because then it'll just give us something to jump up about.
Well, you could go a win, a loss, and a win, 2 losses, and a draw, or something.
That's right. Something like that. Which will be same 4 points, but at least we've got a win out of it.
Yeah.
So I think 4 points, out of our first 12, I think will be interesting. I don't know. Again, you follow the Premier League more than I do. I don't know what kind of new up and coming teams, or the teams at the bottom, how they start off, how many, because I heard that, there's some teams that hadn't won for about 6 months, in the Premier League, including the F word, I can't say it actually. How's it go again? Fulham. Yeah. So some teams haven't won for a very long time. So I suppose that if you get yourself a win or a couple of wins in the first couple of months, you're probably setting yourselves up half decently in the Premier League, but you know more about that than I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's momentum's a thing, right? And the fans coming back is also an X factor. We're not too sure how that's going to impact the first couple games. I'm sure, we'll see some kind of bizarre results, I would expect. But, Arsenal, Palace, Villa, Brighton, it's certainly not similar to what Norwich are facing. I think they've got like Leicester, City, Liverpool, Man United or something in the first 4. So, it's about, chunking off the season probably. And it's a lot, you're missing about 8 games this year than you're used to. So it'll be exciting to see. Ivan Toney, though, it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is absolute baller, and he's going to be able to rise to the occasion, huh?
I reckon, honestly, I reckon that he will do. If you look at his face and look at his eyes and just look at him, he's a badass. He's so confident, and he just doesn't care. He just does not care at all. And it's like one of those things where, I thought I wasn't sure when he came, but I have to admit, and we've got this whole thing as well. It's quite funny because what football fans are like. He comes in and said about Ollie Watkins, he doesn't score in the first 2 games. All the Brentford fans, obviously we couldn't get the game, but they're all, a lot of them are kind of giving him grief on social media. God, what did we get him for? He's a waste of money. He's a waste of money. This, that, and the other. After that, he starts banging the goals in. So we're watching the game in the pub. Every time he scores a goal, as a bit of an in-joke, we all start singing, "What a waste of money!" Like,
Yeah.
So
that's fun.
So fingers crossed he's not going to be a waste of money. But what I'll say is that obviously the first game of the season that opens the Premier League is going to be Brentford versus Arsenal at our new stadium, New Griffin Park, as we call it. So it's going to be a brand new stadium. It's going to be full, 17,500 people in that stadium.
Loud.
And I was there when we played Bournemouth, 4,500, and it sounded like 50,000 in that stadium. So that stadium is going to be rocking on that night. So you need to check it out.
And it's opening up the season. You've got Friday Night Lights. Right. It's a solo game, so that'll be fun. Yeah. All right, Billy. I think that's all the time we got for this one today. But I, absolutely love hearing your passion, enthusiasm for your team. It's going to be really exciting to watch how the bees buzz this year. And maybe you could also, before we say goodbye, just let our listeners know where they can find you one more time.
Of course, we are. So Besotted Podcast, you can get us on Twitter, BEESOTTED, as well. Instagram, we're going live. It's been Besotted 1992. We're not quite live on that, but we'll keep it going. And also Facebook as well. We've got Besotted on Facebook. But also, like I said to you, we do this podcast, which is a brilliant podcast. We've got 800 episodes in now as well. So we're pretty lively. And you can catch us on prideofwest.london. So prideofwest.london. And that's because we are the pride of West London, okay? Not Fulham, not QPR. We want to talk about Chelsea. We talk about Brentford, okay? We might be the smallest, but we're still the proudest.
Billy, it was a delight having you on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.